Yesterday, we discussed how Liz Cheney might be on the outs with the Republican Party. Apparently, we were not the only ones discussing her. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy was caught on a hot mic blasting Cheney after an interview on Fox. Let's take a listen to that.
I think she's got real problems. I've had it with her. It's, I've lost confidence. Well, someone just has to bring emotion, but I assume that will probably take place.
All right, editor-in-chief at The Real News, host of the Working People podcast, Max Alvarez, co-host of The Real Land podcast, Marshall Kosloff. They join us now to discuss. I apologize to the audience. I think this is the third successive day we've had to talk about Liz Cheney, but the news
brings us
keeps
no joy,
on giving. It's interesting, Marshall, this entire thing. Steve Scalise came out this morning. He wants to remove Liz Cheney. But I find it hilarious that Elise Stefanik is the person that they want to replace her with, who is on policy not all that substantively different. Her only difference is that she didn't think Trump should have been impeached for January 6th. So what do you make of that dynamic?
Yeah, there's 15 things I want to make of this. One, we need to retire the idea of a hot mic as being something that authentically happens. That was the most clearly scripted thing ever. If only someone would do something.
If only someone would say
it. It'd be terrible.
Yeah, because no one in normal conversation is like, I have lost confidence in them.
No one talks
No one talks like that.
Anyway, go on.
Go ahead, Marshall.
So I think it's just really important to note up on top. But secondly, I'll push back on the characterization of Elise Stefanik. Like Elise Stefanik, when it comes to the policy issues that matter in this caucus, she's incredibly pro-Trump. She's a person who very much early on was this figure who was very much center-right, part of this. We're a younger generation of Republicans. We're much more like millennials. We're more socially liberal. And she clearly pivoted from that. So I really will say on the issues of substance for this caucus, she's quite a bit different because, frankly, the question that matters right now is what's your opinion of Trump? That's the question on the mind of voters. That's the question on the minds of the actual members. And on that specific issue, she's quite different. So that's just the thing I push back on.
No, you're right, which is that it is just all about Trump. That's actually the only thing that matters.
Yeah, I mean, Max, what Sagar was referring to here is Ryan Grzewski pulled their voting records. Elise Stefanik voted with Trump 77.7% of the time. Liz Cheney voted with Trump 93% of the time. So in terms of like any sort of policy alignment, Cheney is much more Trumpian. But it doesn't matter because this is the only thing that actually matters within the party now.
Yeah, I mean, apparently. And, it's all about that messaging, because I think one of the kind of questions I was asking myself when I was reading this morning was like, it seemed to be suggested by a number of pundits and people on the Hill that, if Liz Cheney had just basically, kept her mouth shut about Trump, this might not be a problem. And I don't know if that's the case, right? I mean, let's not forget that, even McCarthy himself joined the chorus after the kind of Capitol Hill riots in January. And then 2 weeks later, he was down in Mar-a-Lago kind of kissing the ring, right? And so I guess, more than anything, I'm very curious to kind of hear what Sagar and Marshall kind of think about whether or not there is even room in the party for kind of these two, at least in terms of the messaging, these two kind of messages to exist simultaneously, because in a way it feels like it's mirroring the discussion we were having about Joe Biden and the Democrats in the election, especially the primaries, right? People on the left, myself included, were kind of railing against Biden for driving so hard for this kind of center-right, reasonable Republican set and sort of ignoring the more energetic Bernie Sanders wing of the party. The Republicans seem to kind of be doing the inverse there and really kind of appealing to the energetic Trumpist base of the party. And Cheney seems to be kind of like dying on the hill of appealing to the Republicans who may have gone over to Biden. And I think that it looks like the party has decided that they don't want to do that. Yes. So I'm curious to know what you guys think, if I'm on point or if I'm in the right direction.
Well, you certainly are. Something I talked a lot about post-January 6th was I thought that a split was inevitable because I do believe that either being pro-Trump or anti-Stop the Steal is largely irreconcilable with the modern caucus, base, and party. It's interesting, Marshall, I saw for the first time, this explicitly floated yesterday by David French. He said, quote, if the House GOP ultimately takes stronger action against Liz Cheney than it did against Marjorie Taylor Greene, one has to consider whether it is time to make tough choices about the continued unity of the party. Is this some sort of emblem of a split? Is this just Twitter posting? What do you think?
I don't think it's an emblem or emblematic of a split. This is, and once again, this is the story of the Trumpian era of American politics. This is entirely about personalities. This goes, so Max, to answer your question, was this inevitable? It wasn't inevitable. Part of what was assumed to have happened after January, when Kevin McCarthy saved Liz Cheney earlier, was Liz Cheney would probably shut up. She would probably move on. That's what most Republicans have tried to do. Most Republicans were not happy with the way Trump handled January 6th, regardless of everything. No one, you'll find very few people in the caucus who would openly say that that was the right political move to articulate and put the party in that position, especially after the Georgia results. What basically everyone wanted from Liz Cheney is for Liz Cheney just to shut up and be a conference chair. There obviously are disagreements she has with a lot of parts of the party, especially when it comes to the Afghanistan withdrawal. But like that being said, if she had just moved on, which most people want to do, this mostly wouldn't have mattered because, Sagar, to the point we were talking about earlier, because the debates are really about Trump and they're not really about policy, they don't really actually matter. So it's not as if we're having Stop the Steal resolutions coming out every other day. So this didn't have to happen this way. And you just have to ask yourself, what exactly was Liz Cheney thinking? You know, if she's doing this because she thinks it's the principled thing to do, more power to her. Seriously, I mean, I think people should applaud politicians when they do what they think is right. But if you're wondering at a strategic level, it's unclear what the thinking was on this.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I mean, I don't know that I'm willing to grant Liz Cheney the benefit of the doubt that this is really about her principles, which begs the question, Max, of what is she up to? Because clearly she's going to have a lot of trouble. I mean, it may be impossible to win in Wyoming at this point. It doesn't seem like she's making an electoral play at this point. It seems like she's making more of a play to get into that sort of Lincoln Project, never Trump lane of media commentary, for which there is an endless appetite of here in this town, even though they represent next to no people out in the country.
Yeah, it's the cynical part of me, it was kind of thinking along those terms, or even, I don't know, is this some sort of dog whistle to the Biden administration? And maybe that's going too far, but I'm just thinking about your recent radar, Crystal, about whether or not Biden has peaked, right? Because I guess I was trying to determine where, if at all, the Biden administration kind of plays into this. Is there a sort of strategic rationale here that we've discussed on a number of past kind of panels about how the GOP positions itself in relationship to the current Biden administration? Does it feel like the GOP, that is, does it feel that, kind of aligning itself in these sort of principial terms, right? Kind of in the vein of Liz Cheney. Is that a dead end? Do they need to kind of tack to the Trumpist kind of side just because that seems like it's the only room that the Biden administration is leaving? Again, I'm sorry I have more questions than real answers on this, but I'm just really kind of curious about the whole situation, looking at it from the outside.
They're great questions, but stick with us. We're going back to Team Rising right after this.